I turned 33 last spring, and my family decided to mark the occasion with a dinner at one of those polished restaurants in Manhattan where the napkins are folded like little crowns and the waiters glide instead of walk. I should have felt grateful. Most folks my age celebrate with takeout or a six-pack. But the truth is, I walked into that evening with a weight in my chest because gatherings with my family always carried a kind of hidden edge. I come from a household where appearances matter more than kindness. My mother, Linda, is retired now, though she spends more energy orchestrating family images on social media than she ever did on her old job. My older sibling, Taylor, works as a fashion influencer, sponsored trips, branded clothes, the whole performance. And then there is me, Alex, the one who took the quiet road, studied computer systems, and built a career in technology. I saved carefully, lived within my means, and last year I bought a condo worth nearly $1.2 million. A place of my own, a sign I thought that I had arrived in my own way. That night the room was full. Relatives, friends of Taylor's, even a few business contacts who barely knew me but knew my mother. Glasses clinked, laughter floated across the tables, and I tried to convince myself it would be a pleasant evening. Then Linda tapped her glass with a spoon. "We have a little something for our Alex," she said, drawing all eyes to me. The waiter appeared with a silver envelope, set it down like it contained a crown jewel. People applauded. Taylor raised a phone already recording. I smiled awkward and opened it. What I pulled out wasn't a card or a check. It was paperwork. Legal documents crisp and cold. Transfer of ownership. My condo, my hard-earned home slated to be signed over into family trust ownership. The language was wrapped in polite legal terms, but the meaning was simple. I was expected to hand over my place to let it become a prize for the family image machine. Laughter bubbled from Taylor's side of the table. My mother leaned closer, her voice sharp but sweetened for the crowd. "Successful families don't let losers own prime property." The words cut deeper than any insult I had carried from them before. And still the cameras kept rolling. A cousin with quick thumbs was already uploading snippets to TikTok. Within an hour, the caption would read, "When the family knows who the real winner island." I froze. Part of me wanted to shout to shove the papers back across the table. Instead, I sat there listening to forks scrape plates while humiliation washed over me. I remembered the long evenings I had worked, double shifts in my 20s, repairing servers, coding into the night, eating instant noodles, so I could save enough for that down payment. And here in front of everyone, my own mother dismissed it all, as though it were nothing more than an embarrassing footnote. I must have looked pale, because a waiter offered to refill my glass. I nodded, grateful for the distraction, though the wine did nothing to settle the storm inside me. That was the moment something hardened in me. A line was crossed, and there was no going back. If you've ever been humiliated by your own family, share your story in the comments so I know I'm not alone. The morning after the birthday ambush, I woke before sunrise. The city was still rubbing sleep from its eyes, and the radiator ticked like a metronome for thoughts I did not want. I made coffee the good kind. I only brewed on weekends and drank it standing by the window. It tasted like metal. Humiliation does that. It salts everything. I kept replaying the moment my mother said the line, "Successful families do not let losers own prime property," as if cruelty were good manners when spelled in cursive. But that sentence did not arrive out of nowhere. It was the loudest crash in a house that had been settling for years, timber groaning, nails loosening. When you live in a family like mine, you learn the difference between accidents and rehearsals. The first rehearsal I can remember was at my graduation dinner. The restaurant was cheaper, the napkins did not wear crowns back then. I was flushed with the relief of finishing school and jittery about the job offer I had tucked into my jacket pocket. Taylor raised a glass and said to Alex, who found a way to be useful in computers. Useful. Not excellent, not proud. Useful like a tool. Everyone laughed. I told myself it was nerves and tried to laugh too. That was the beginning of my small accommodations. Thanksgiving a few years later carried the same weather pattern. Linda liked to go around the table listing accomplishments. She did this like a master of ceremonies for a gala that had forgotten why it gathered. Taylor just signed a brand collaboration, she announced, and the table glowed for a moment. And Alex, she added, "Well, the office is still steady, steady." I smiled into the steam of my mashed potatoes and learned to keep my face still. Steadiness apparently is what you praise when you cannot imagine the labor behind it. New Year's Eve was the cruelest. Plastic flutes, fireworks over the river, neighbors hugging on the sidewalk. Taylor posted a photo with two cousins under white lights strung along the fence and captioned it, Winner's circle, New Year, same excellence. I am in the corner of that picture blurry, holding a trash bag open. It took me months to delete it from my phone, and even then I could see the outline where it used to sit in my gallery like a splinter. Sometimes the meanness hid inside help. A family group chat article about power postures sent right after I mentioned back pain from a week of late deployments. Have you considered better optics? Taylor texted once, a phrase that turned work into wardrobe. Optics. I did not know that a person's kindness could be negotiated like lighting. My mother adopted the word as if it were scripture. At Sunday dinner, she said, "We must think about optics. We are a brand whether we like it or not." She meant Taylor's brand, but the math required my cooperation. The cracks widened 5 days before the birthday dinner. That was the afternoon I came home early, because a server migration ran clean for once. We finished in 3 hours instead of 6. The apartment smelled like citrus cleaner, and the hallway lights were on unusual at that hour. On the dining table sat a neat stack of papers, a red pen, and a printer cooling on its haunches. Taylor's voice drifted from the speakerphone. Linda's voice answered soft as velvet over a blade. "Once it is served, we just wait for acknowledgement," she said. "Tone matters. Surprise, not aggression. Keep the footage clean." I stepped into view, and both voices flinched. You can hear a flinch. It is a tiny contraction in silence. Taylor slid the papers into a silver envelope the same color I saw later at the restaurant and tucked it into a tote as if filing receipts. Budget stuff, Taylor said, too bright, too fast. Working on a new plan for expenses. The lie had an echo. Taylor has never once balanced a budget. Brand deals arrive or they do not, and the closest Taylor gets to accounting is counting likes. On the counter sat 2 sticky notes, one with a lawyer's name and a number, the other with 3 words in block letters, "Record the reaction." I picked up a cold bottle from the fridge and pressed it to the side of my neck. I needed the shock of the chill to steady my hands. Taylor crossed the room, kissed my cheek like we were in a holiday commercial, and asked if I could swing by to pick up a dry cleaning order for an aunt. Errands to keep me moving, to keep me harmless. That night, Taylor went unusually tender-ordered my favorite takeout, queued up a classic film, laughed at my old jokes. When kindness arrives late and dressed in costume, it is not kindness. It is choreography. I lay awake long after Taylor left, hearing ghost sounds, the scratch of a red pen, the soft shudder of a printer, Linda's voice saying, "Tone matters." I had the shape of a plan, but not yet the stamina to fight it. The day after the birthday, my phone pinged with a family email. It looked like a reply, all that did not want me, except there I was on the thread, tucked in by mistake. The subject line read, "Optics for the transfer." Inside bullet points I could recite even now. Secure condo and trust to centralize assets. Leverage birthday moment for narrative cohesion. Avoid confrontation. Humor works better on camera. A final line from Linda. "Remember, we correct what the world sees. Private feelings are a separate project." I stared at those words until they blurred. Private feelings are a separate project. To whom? To my mother, feelings were something you revisit when the episode is edited. A cousin texted me the TikTok link. The clip had crossed 100,000 views overnight. The caption called me a slow learner in a winning family. Comments stacked like snowdrifts. Some strangers sympathized, most did not. Strangers love a pile-on when the lighting is bright and the subject looks stunned. I did not respond. I went for a walk instead, 3 long blocks in the cold, counting the breaths between the streetlights. Somewhere between the corner store and the florist that never seems to close, a sentence arrived and sat down in me. They plan in the open because they assume you will not resist. Once that sentence rooted, I began to take inventory. The condo deed, the mortgage statements, the trail of payments that spelled out my life in tidy columns. I have kept every receipt since my first month out of school. Somewhere in a blue folder is the note from my first landlord reminding me to sign the lease in blue ink, not black. I pulled the folder out of the hall closet and ran my fingers across each tab. People can call you names and it will still hurt, but numbers and signatures, when kept correctly, do not flinch. I opened my laptop and created a new folder titled House. Inside, I saved scans of the deed, the title insurance, the closing documents, the first property tax bill, and the most recent one. I exported my bank statements, highlighted every transfer tied to the condo. I redacted what needed redacting. I labeled each file with the clarity of a person who has finally found a purpose bigger than pleasing. The work calmed me. My breathing slowed. The coffee tasted like coffee again. There is an old saying my first supervisor loved to repeat during emergencies: calm is a decision we keep choosing. I did not feel calm that morning, but I chose the actions calm people take. I wrote down a boundary in my notebook: no signatures, no meetings, no calls without a witness, and underlined it twice. Then I called a lawyer not to wage war, but to be ready for one. The receptionist said the earliest consult was the following week. Fine. Preparation is not loud, it is consistent. In the afternoon, Linda sent a message. No hard feelings, right? The video is performing. It helps everyone when the family looks united. I typed and erased 4 replies. Then I sent a single sentence. Future housing decisions will be handled by my counsel. Please put requests in writing. But what they did not know was that I had already started gathering more than papers. There were traces scattered like breadcrumbs, accidental emails, cached drafts from a shared tablet, a rehearsal clip where Taylor practiced the birthday line in front of a mirror and laughed when the delivery landed sharp. I did not rage. I saved everything. I looked around my living room, the one I had painted myself in a color that changes with the daylight. In the morning it leans blue. By late afternoon it warms to a soft gray. Hairline cracks in the paint had started to appear above the window frame. Small, but there. If you asked a contractor, they would say it is normal, settling. You patch them, you watch them, you do not panic. Families too settle. Some houses can be shored up, others need a new foundation. I ran my palm over the wall and felt the seam. I am not a fighter by nature, I am a builder. But I have learned that even builders must at times refuse demolition disguised as love. The next step was not to shout, it was to set the stage so the truth would speak for itself on record, in sequence with numbers that do not bend. The days after the birthday fiasco stretched long and thin like the pause before a storm. I worked, I ate, I slept in shallow bursts. Yet beneath that rhythm I kept digging, convinced there was more to uncover. It began with a slip of paper. I found it wedged under a coaster on the kitchen counter, a neon sticky note that read in block letters, "Record the reaction." 3 words, bare as bones. Beneath it was a scribbled number, belonging to a law office uptown. My pulse slowed instead of quickening the way it sometimes does when anger turns to clarity. I remembered the printer's low hum days before the dinner, the shuffle of papers, the way Taylor had slid something into a silver envelope. Now, with this note in my hand, the picture sharpened. This was no impulsive humiliation, no offhand cruelty. It was scripted. I powered up my laptop, traced the number, and found the firm. Real Estate Estate Planning Family Trusts. Their website showed smiling lawyers beside oak shelves. I imagined Linda's voice in that office, dressed in concern, weaving my condo into some family legacy. Later that evening, while scrubbing pans, I heard the faint buzz of a tablet left behind in the living room. Taylor had forgotten to log out. I saw cached drafts, captions rehearsed for TikTok Watch, the loser squirm, family knows best, luxury is for winners. Alongside was a video clip, shaky but clear enough, Taylor in the bathroom mirror, practicing the birthday line, smirking when it landed sharp. That was the proof I needed. Betrayal is heavy, but evidence steadies the weight. I copied everything. Emails forwarded to myself, screenshots tucked into folders, clips backed up twice. I labeled them with the precision of my profession: evidence A, TikTok rehearsal, evidence B, email thread optics transfer, evidence C, sticky note directive. Each file became a brick in the wall I was building, not to hide behind, but to stand on. The more I uncovered, the less I felt rage. It was replaced by a colder resolve. They weren't simply unkind. They were architects of my humiliation, drafting contracts, choreographing my shock gambling that my silence would hold. But silence has a half-life. Mine was expiring. I closed the folder, leaned back in my chair, and said aloud to no one but the empty apartment, I will not be your storyline. What they didn't know was that I had already called a lawyer. The first consultation was booked. I was ready to let the truth write its own caption. Weddings are supposed to be about love, about vows spoken under light and music. But in my family, even holy ceremonies became stages for hierarchy. Taylor's wedding was no exception. The invitation arrived embossed and heavy, its gold lettering, declaring a union, though what I read between the lines was a performance. The venue was a grand hotel ballroom with ceilings so high they made you whisper. Chandeliers glittered like frozen rain. Guests in tuxedos and gowns poured wine as though it were tap water. I arrived in a simple suit, one I had worn before to a work function, and I could already hear the quiet judgments buzzing. At the reception, I was directed not to the polished tables near the stage where the family of honor sat, but to the far corner near the service doors. My chair scraped against a trash bin on wheels. The scent of disinfectant lingered. A cousin snapped a photo and muttered optics. That word again, always optics. I swallowed the sting and sat down. My napkin was wrinkled, the cutlery mismatched. Meanwhile, at the head table, Taylor glowed under the spotlight, raising a glass. Cameras lined the edge like paparazzi. Then came the toast. To the sibling who never quite made it, Taylor said, laughter curling at the edges of the words. Guests chuckled, some politely, others with open amusement. I heard my mother's laugh, sharp, triumphant. Someone nearby whispered, "This will trend." I gripped my glass until my knuckles blanched. Betrayal is sharp when it is private. In public, it is a spectacle. They weren't only mocking me, they were broadcasting my humiliation as entertainment. When the dinner ended, waiters wheeled out a bill the size of a prophecy. $2,800 printed bold. Linda turned her eyes toward me, calm as if this had been rehearsed. "Alex, you should cover it. It's the least you can do." The ballroom hushed. Dozens of eyes turned, waiting to see my reaction cameras at the ready. It was the birthday envelope all over again, except this time under brighter lights. I rose slowly, the chair legs screeching against the tile. My voice carried across the silence. "Then, let the successful ones pay for their own success." The words dropped heavy, echoing. A ripple moved through the crowd, some gasps, some murmurs, a few delighted smirks from strangers who enjoyed a scene. Taylor's smile cracked, if only for a breath. I walked out of the ballroom before they could recover, before the cameras could catch another angle. Out on the street, the city air was cooler than the chandelier glow. I loosened my tie and inhaled, like it was the first real breath I had taken in months. That night I understood they had drawn the line in public, and I had stepped over it in public too. The game had changed. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't just walking away. I had evidence. And now I had witnesses. An entire ballroom had heard their cruelty. My revenge would not need to be loud. It would be documented. The night after Taylor's wedding, I sat in my condo with the lights off. The glow from the city came through the blinds in slats, striping the walls like prison bars. My suit still hung over the chair, faint with the smell of champagne and disinfectant. I replayed the scene, my mother's eyes cold, the crowd leaning in Taylor's smirk, but this time I no longer flinched. I opened the folder on my laptop labeled House. Inside were the files I had been collecting since the birthday dinner, the rehearsal clips, the emails, the sticky notes, the draft captions meant to go viral at my expense. I added new entries, photos from the wedding, screenshots of relatives' posts, bragging about the seating chart comments, mocking me under Taylor's curated highlight reels. Every new item was another nail in a coffin they had built with their own hands. 2 days later, while sorting through the mail, I found a plain envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a photocopy of a will. My name was not on it. My condo was listed under a family estate designation with Taylor as sole heir. At the bottom was Linda's signature, shaky but recognizable. A forgery, or worse, a document she had filed quietly, assuming I would cave. The rage that burned then wasn't loud. It was steady, a pilot light that wouldn't go out. I slipped the document into a clear sleeve and filed it under Evidence D, Forged Will. I called my lawyer. The receptionist's voice was calm, professional. Bring everything, she said. The more organized, the better. I brought a binder heavy with tabs. She flipped through it silently, page after page, clip after clip. Finally, she looked up. "This isn't just family drama. This is attempted fraud. And if they've already filed anything with the court, we can challenge it." Hearing those words settled something in me. For years, I had felt like I was reacting, explaining, defending. Now, for the first time, the burden shifted. They would be the ones answering questions. A week later came the family meeting. They had called it under the guise of clearing the air. I knew better. They wanted one last chance to bully me into compliance before lawyers became involved. I arrived early, binder under my arm, recorder in my pocket. Linda began with her usual performance, voice dripping honey. "Alex, we just want unity. Families share, families sacrifice." I slid the photocopy of the will across the table. "Is this what you mean by sacrifice?" The room stiffened. Taylor's face went pale. I didn't shout, didn't accuse. I let the paper speak. Then calmly, I laid out the emails, the drafts, the sticky notes, the videos. Evidence stacked like bricks. "This is the story you've been writing about me," I said. "But you forgot I keep records too." For the first time in years, they had no reply. Just silence, broken only by the hum of the ceiling fan. What they didn't know was that I had already filed copies with my lawyer and the county clerk. Whether they denied it, spun it, or destroyed every shred, the truth was already on record. I stood, tucked the binder under my arm, and walked out. Behind me came the sound of chairs, shifting whispers frantic. But I didn't turn back. The trap had already sprung. The family insisted on another gathering, this time under the pretense of resolution. It was held in the function room of a suburban country club, polished wood floors, windows looking out over manicured lawns. They thought a fancy setting would soften the edges, but all it did was sharpen the contrast between appearances and truth. I arrived early again, binder in hand, voice recorder tucked into my pocket. This time I carried not just documents but certainty. My lawyer had already filed motions to protect my deed, securing the condo under my name alone. No signatures could be faked, no papers quietly slid into county records. The law at last was on my side. Linda opened the meeting with a performance worthy of a stage. Alex, darling, we've all had our misunderstandings. What matters is family unity. We should focus on love, not conflict. I let her speak. I let Taylor chime in, voice dripping with condescension. If you had only trusted us, this would never have gone so far. We were thinking of optics, of our image, of elevating all of us together. When their words dried up, I placed the projector remote on the table and pressed play. On the wall bloomed images, emails with subject lines like "Optics for Transfer" captions rehearsed in draft form. "Watch the loser squirm." A video clip of Taylor practicing in a mirror, delivering the cutting toast with a smirk. Gasps rippled through the room. A cousin covered her mouth. An uncle muttered, "Good Lord." Then came the will. Projected larger than life, Linda's shaky signature under a line excluding me from ownership. The silence that followed was thick enough to press on your chest. "This," I said quietly, "is not love. This is fraud, and it is already in the hands of my attorney." Taylor sprang up, face red. "This is private. You can't just—" "It stopped being private when you turned my humiliation into content," I interrupted. My voice was calm, steady. "It stopped being private when you uploaded videos for strangers to laugh at. Now the evidence belongs not just to me, but to the court." The projector screen froze on a still frame. Taylor mid-laugh rehearsal clip paused at the moment. Cruelty was clearest. Someone in the back whispered, "This will ruin them." And it did. Within days, the leak spread. A cousin shared the footage online, and soon the scandal snowballed. Headlines read, "Influencer exposed for staging siblings' humiliation." Sponsorship deals dropped Taylor overnight. One brand posted a curt statement, "We do not condone exploitation or fraud." Linda wasn't spared. Local reporters dug into her social posts, stitching together years of barbed comments, passive-aggressive captions, toxic parenting laid bare for the public. The church committee she'd chaired asked for her resignation to protect the congregation's reputation. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with messages, friends from college, coworkers, even strangers who had seen the clips. Some offered sympathy, others outrage. A few thanked me for standing firm. For the first time, my story was not twisted by their editing. It was told in my own order with my own evidence. At work, colleagues who had once kept their distance now nodded in quiet respect. One said, "It takes guts to face your own blood." I didn't reply. I just kept walking, binder under my arm, records intact. That night, I sat by my window again, looking out over the city. The blinds cast the same striped shadows as before, but this time they felt less like prison bars and more like the rails of a track I was steering myself along. What they didn't know was that this was only the beginning. Court filings would take months. Reputation damage was already in motion. But the real victory wasn't legal or public, it was private. For the first time, I no longer feared the next family dinner, the next ambush, the next envelope slid across a table. The curtain had fallen on their theater, and I had walked off stage with my dignity intact. The weeks that followed felt like walking through the ruins of a once grand house. The walls still stood, but the roof was gone, and every room echoed with drafts. My family had spent years constructing an image of unity and prestige, but after the projector lit up that country club wall, the whole structure collapsed. Taylor's downfall was immediate. Sponsorships were pulled one after another. Contracts vanished like mist. The polished Instagram feed went silent for days, then sputtered back to life with apologies that read like ads for pity. But the comments told another story. Followers turning brands, distancing former fans, mocking the staged cruelty. In a world that feeds on image, Taylor had poisoned their own well. Linda, my mother, fared no better. Her name, once tied to church committees and neighborhood fundraisers, became shorthand for manipulation. A local columnist wrote a piece titled, "When Parenting Turns Performative," citing her leaked messages as examples. The congregation she once presided over asked her to step down. In the grocery aisles, whispers followed her. For someone who lived by optics, obscurity would have been kinder. And me, I did not celebrate. I worked. My lawyer filed the necessary motions presenting the forged will and fraudulent trust papers. The court reviewed, then ruled firmly the condo remained mine alone. No trust, no transfer, no hidden clauses. My blue folder of receipts and payments, every bank transfer, every mortgage statement had been my shield. When the judge's ruling came through, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and read it 3 times. The words were dry clinical, but to me they were a hymn. Ownership confirmed. Forgery condemned. Damages considered. The damages were not only financial. A settlement was reached to cover the legal costs and the emotional distress, small compared to the $1 million estate they had hoped to seize, but symbolic. For once their betrayal had a price. Friends asked me if I felt vindicated. The truth is, what I felt most was tired. Years of barbs of being the backdrop to someone else's performance had worn me down. Revenge did not feel like triumph. It felt like a line finally drawn with ink that would not fade. I stopped answering their calls. I blocked numbers, filtered emails, set boundaries, not with anger, but with silence. At family gatherings I was invited to, I sent polite regrets. I owed them nothing, not attendance, not explanations. And yet there were moments of grace. A cousin wrote to me privately, "You were right to stand your ground. I wish I'd spoken up sooner." A colleague from work left a card on my desk, "Respect." No signature, just that word. Those small gestures reminded me that even in the darkest theater there are witnesses who see the truth. I poured my energy into my career, into quiet evenings in my condo, the condo that was without question mine. I began writing not in a diary hidden away, but in a blog where I spoke openly about toxic family dynamics, about setting boundaries, about the price of peace. The posts resonated. Strangers left comments. Thank you for putting words to what I lived. Others asked questions, sought advice, shared their own stories. Revenge, I learned, is not always about fire and ash. Sometimes it is about preservation, keeping what is yours, refusing to let others rewrite your story. What they didn't know was that by trying to strip me of a home, they gave me a platform. Their betrayal gave me an audience. And from now on, I would decide what part of my life became public and what remained mine alone. The condo is quiet again. The lights from the street slide across the wall in steady stripes. What changed the forged trust is gone. The fake will dismiss my name secured on the deed. What stays? I still work long hours. I still save receipts in blue folders. I still live small but steady. We kept one rule: no signatures without me present. The paper did the rest, the deed, clause by clause, locked in my favor. Thanks to Marla the clerk, who stamped my filings without fuss, to the paralegal who indexed every document, and to my lawyer who treated it not as family gossip, but as fraud on record. Their work was procedural, not dramatic, and that was enough. The moral is simple. Boundaries save time, records cut noise, calm wins. What would you have done first? Call, file, or walk away? Tell me below. Tap subscribe and come back this weekend. Details changed. This channel isn't legal advice. We'll keep it clean.